I'd like to think that I would just know. I've always known. You know, I would know. And I don't think that, he's never has hidden it from me. I used to laugh at people, like laugh at his mom, or when we would go into these treatment centers and they're like, we're going to do a urinalysis and see what kind of drugs you're on. And him and I would laugh because he'd tell his mom and these counselors, he's like, I just told you the drugs that I do. I told you I do heroin and meth. You think I'm making it up? You know, why do you want me to pee in the cup? That's the kind of openness and honesty that we've always had. So, you know, I don't think that would change. I don't think he would start lying to me. But then, you know, he's playing a super high-stakes game, being on probation and all that. So it's hard saying. It really is. Hard to predict. This is heroin. But with him, it's not just heroin, because he'll go off and do meth and everything. So it's just drugs in general.
So if he lived outside of Franklin County, you're less worried. Or, I mean, how you said the environment could help.
Well, when I say environment, like, again, a lot of it has to do with just logistics. So the house I live in Franklin County, if he was to leave my house on foot, he'd have to walk 2 miles, and he would get to like an intersection where there's several gas stations and like a Burger King restaurant, right? So then from there, who knows, maybe he can get a ride. He's right close to the highway or whatever. So when it comes to getting a job, getting back and forth to work, if he wanted to go to school, anything that he would do, transportation would be an issue from where I live, because we're out in a semi-rural area. Versus if I can get him a place, if he can find a place, say in South St. Louis, just east of here, well, we know full well that he could make a living, have a social life, and fulfill pretty much all of his obligations off of a bus pass. A bus pass and a bicycle, when you live in South St. Louis, I mean, you can exist very easily. We know this for a fact. So that's one of the reasons why I want him out of Franklin County and into an area where he can, because the thing is, for a lot of these young people, whether they're in drugs or not, transportation is a huge problem. It's a big cost. It is. And when you're just starting out and you're making, you know, minimum wage or maybe just a little more than little minimum wage, transportation is almost unattainable. You know, I talked to all these apprentices through here, and they're like, you know, they're starting off at $14 an hour, and in no time they're making 20, 22, you know, and on up. And the upper term, the 8th term that's getting ready to graduate, I mean, they're making almost $30 an hour, and transportation is still an issue. Affording transportation and keeping reliable transportation is still an issue. So, and that's going to be a big thing for Vincent. And I've made it very clear to him, I will not, coming right out of prison, there's no way I will help him get a car. Absolutely no. No, absolutely. So get him out of Franklin County, get him into an area where he can sustain himself. Because that's another big part of it. I do not want to be responsible for driving him around and doing this and doing that. No, thank you. He does need to, you know, start taking responsibility for his own health and his own finances and all of that. His own education, his career, it needs to start becoming his responsibility. It does. But at the same time, I'm his dad. And I get really aggravated with people, and I'm you know, you say you've never heard people say that before. Well, here's another one for you. I go to these meetings where we're all sitting around and we're talking about our children who were addicted to heroin and methamphetamines and all of this horrible situation. And they're, you know, these are young people. They're 17 years old, they're 18 years old, 20 years old. My son's 21, going to be 22 next month. And people will say, well, They need to step up and do that on their own. They need to call that treatment center, and they need to figure out how to do it, and they need to do this on their own. And I'm thinking to myself about my friend Meha. I didn't put Meha on the list, but Meha has 4 children, and she has the 3 oldest are all girls, and they're all super intelligent girls. She has a master's degree from the University of Chicago. She has homeschooled those girls. They are master musicians, athletes, intellectually in school, straight A students, right? And so they're all in that same age bracket as Vincent. Perfectly sober, near genius children. She's having to hold their hand like everywhere they go. They screw up everything. Like she can't send them off to college. They wreck cars. They forget paperwork. They're kids. They're kids. So when I hear people say, "Oh, well, your 19-year-old heroin addict son should be able to navigate the medical industrial complex," I'm like, really? Really? Her genius kid can't even get, find her way across campus. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think that people put too much, they have unrealistic expectations of these young people in these situations. Completely unrealistic. Oh, he should be able to do that on his own. No, I should not be expecting him to do that on his own at all.
So him living in St. Louis versus Franklin County, some of it is just about kind of facilitating those
his own, starting to develop those things. He needs me. He needs his family around him. He needs the community very close by. He will need financial assistance from us. He's going to need guidance. He's going to, he is going to need us, but at least if he's in this area, he can begin to start branching out and taking responsibility on his own. And I think it's going to be a huge thing for him. Like the area I'm talking about is near where Sandy lives. And so he did have one night out recently, and he spent it with us. And we were able to leave her house, and him and I walked a couple of blocks up the street to the record exchange. We just walked up there and back. He still talks about that. Still talks about it. That we were able to walk up to the record exchange, and right there from that corner on Eichelberger and Hampton, he's looking at multiple restaurants and, the Catholic school there, which is DeBerg High School. They were having a football game, so the field was all lit up and people out there playing, restaurant across the street and all this activity. And he was like, wow, he had no idea that life could be like that you could just literally walk out your door and go do that.
Yeah.
So I think that would be another huge, world experience for him that he needs. Definitely.
So aside from that, because I thought you had said something about all of the things that happened in Franklin County, where that was also a reason for him not to be there or something like that.
Yeah. Well, because the house that I live in, I bought that house when he was 3. Mm-hmm. So in his mind, that's the only home he's ever known. I mean, other than living with his mother and her husbands, I am his home. And so then there's been a lot of water under the bridge there. He died in that house and was revived in that house. Because of his drug addiction, I mean, him and I have had knockdown, violent fights in that house. He was involved in a very unhealthy, codependent relationship with a young girl that a lot happened in that house. She still lives in that area. The drug connections all still live in that area. So there's been a lot that's happened in Franklin County and in that house and in that world.
Yeah. Yeah, because again, I just certainly hear people talk about, like people, places, and things like that idea, right? And,
yeah.
And then, but some other people will say, well, you really can find drugs anywhere. So there's kind of this back and forth.
Well, it is true that you can find drugs anywhere, but at the same time, I'll go back to, I think it's in human nature that when you want a fresh start and